Insecurity and fear. These are two things that all of us deal with on some level in our lives and at some point in our ministries. Personally, I can say that I have definitely been at a place many times in my own ministry where I have led out of a place of fear and insecurity. And I chose, instead of building God's kingdom through serving others, I chose to focus on building my own fortress, establishing my own place of leadership and showing people I was the leader, you have to listen to me, because I was insecure about my own leadership. I was afraid of what they would think if they knew what I was really thinking or feeling on the inside. And so, I think that the reality is that at some point, you're going to face insecurity in your leadership. You're going to face fear. It's not a question of if, but more a matter of when. And so, our natural response is protection. And protection is not a bad thing, right? We want protection, we need protection. But when we get to the point where protecting ourselves, building our own fortress around our place of leadership becomes more important than building God's kingdom, I think that that's when the issue comes in. But this is not a new problem. I think that one of the clearest examples that we see of this in the scriptures is King Herod himself, also known as Herod the Great. Now, while we only find one key passage about Herod in the scriptures that gives us any detail of his life, history tells us a lot about Herod. He comes a few decades before Jesus comes onto the scene of human history. It's in a time when the Roman Empire is expanding, changes are abounding, the Jewish nation is expecting, anticipating greatly. They're waiting for the Messiah to come, to bring God's kingdom in fullness. And so, in the midst of this, Herod enters the story. And he's a pretty complex character. You see, politically, Herod is clearly Roman. He has chosen to align himself with Rome. He makes good friends with Mark Antony and Octavian. So Mark Antony and Octavian are both in line to be the emperor in Rome. So Herod, he knows his stuff. He knows who to be friends with, what he's doing. Also, culturally, he's Greek. So he's in a whole different world. He loves the Greek language. It's even said he wanted to make Jerusalem a Greek place. But racially, he's an Arab. He's a descendant of Esau. And religiously, Herod is a Jew. So he's this kaleidoscope of character. He's all over the map. Beyond this, people even said Herod was good looking. But he didn't just have a good body. They said Herod was brilliant. He had a good mind. But if you were a Jew at this time, you didn't think of Herod in the best of terms. You probably thought of him more as somebody who was a pretty lax Jew, not very good at following the Torah. But by the time that he was 25, his father had already appointed him to be the governor of Galilee, which was not a great place. It was filled with bandits. But Herod came in there and he rid the place of bandits. And he made it a place where trade could flourish. 10 years later, in 40 BC, Herod was appointed as king of the Jews by Rome. So the fortress of his personal kingdom seemed to grow immeasurably that day. He began working immediately by building different projects across the land. He built new roads, he built harbors, temples, palaces, even whole cities. And beyond that, his most dramatic projects, those were his fortresses. He built at least 7 of them that we've identified today, and probably many more. But through all of this, it seems that Herod was doing more than building just a literal fortress. It seems that he was building a personal fortress around his throne. His need to build his own fortress is seen through several events in his life. First of all, we see it through Miriam, his wife. He had 10 wives, but this one he really loved. But because of a rumor, he killed her. A rumor that she might take his throne. Heaven forbid. Let me just kill my wife if I find something that she might do wrong. But then he goes further than this. He kills 2 of his sons because he's worried, well, they're next in line for the throne. They might take the throne sooner than later, right? Makes perfect sense. So what Herod didn't realize, though, was that these supposed threats to his throne were nothing compared to what was to come. And that was the Messiah, who would bring God's kingdom with him, who would establish himself as the true king of the Jews. So we see this pickup in Matthew's story. And if you have your Bibles and you want to turn to Matthew 2, we're going to start at verse 1. So we've moved from 40 BC now to probably around 6 BC, possibly 5 or 4 BC. But Matthew 2 verse 1 says this. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." What we see is some Gentile astrologers, they're probably from Babylon, and they've come because somehow through their studying the stars, they've ascertained that the Messiah has been born. This great king has been born, the King of the Jews. So they come, and they don't go to Herod, the King of the Jews. No, they're just looking for him in the capital city. Because, I mean, he's the king, he should be born in the capital, right? So they're asking around, and apparently Jerusalem's like a southern town, news spreads fast, everybody knows everything, and Herod finds out. So in verse 3, this is how Herod responds. It says, when King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. So immediately Herod's response is being troubled. It's very clear that his throne, he's afraid of it being threatened. His fortress is in danger now. And so, who is this King of the Jews? He must be wondering, who is this that they're talking about? But I don't think it takes long for Herod to put 2 and 2 together. That it's not just any king, but it's the king that the Jews have been waiting for, the Messiah. So he calls together the religious experts, asks them, hey, where's this Messiah going to be born? And they say, listen, it's pretty clear in Micah that he's going to be born in Bethlehem. So they go on, he sends them away, he calls together the Magi, and he brings them to him. He says, listen, I know you guys have come to see the Messiah, you've come to meet the King of the Jews. That's great. Now tell me all you know about it, and I want you to go out and find him. When you find him, you tell me where he is, because I want to be there too. I want to go there and worship him. So of course, they go out, they find Jesus, the Messiah, and they bow down and they worship him, which is of course the exact opposite of what Herod wants to do. So let's pick up the story in verse 16. When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. So the Magi don't come back. They're warned in a dream, hey, listen, don't go back to Herod. This dream clearly implies that Herod is out to no good, right? He doesn't care about the Messiah. He's not really wanting to come worship him. And when he finds out that this is what they've done, that they've gone back to their home country, he's furious. How could they not keep his plan? How could he not know who the rival is? Well, what's the next best thing if you don't know who to kill? Well, for King Herod, the next best thing is just kill them all, right? Kill all the possibilities. So, quenching his thirst to protect his throne, what he does, he goes out and kills all the baby boys in Bethlehem who are 2 or under. No big deal to Herod. He's killed plenty of people already. Why not kill some more? But, of course, this isn't without consequence for the little town of Bethlehem that day. However, something significant happens again. A dream comes to Joseph, and the angel of the Lord tells him, hey, you need to get out of here with the Messiah. Joseph goes, he gets out of there. And in the spring of 4 BC, while the Messiah is in Egypt with his family, there's a turn of events in history. Herod's health is failing, both mentally and physically. He kills one more time. Just one more time, he's afraid his throne's going to be threatened. It's another one of his sons. But he comes to a point where he realizes his fortress is about to fall. He's going to die, and there's nothing he can do to stop it. But he's a little afraid that people aren't going to care that he dies. So what's he do? He's got to preserve himself, right? He's all about protecting himself, self-preservation. He gives one last order. Go out and gather a bunch of Jewish officials and kill them when I die. That way there will be mourning in the land when I die. Fortunately, though, this wasn't carried out. And we see Herod died. It's a tragic death. His fortress falls, and that's the end for him. But because of this, Jesus' family is able to return back. We return back to the land in Matthew 2:19. So after returning home, Jesus grows up, right? He comes, he preaches this good news that God's kingdom is here. And he becomes a king that stands in stark contrast to Herod. Unlike Herod, he rules with love as his motive, not fear. Because Jesus knows who he is. He knows that he's the beloved Son of God. And beyond that, he doesn't just rest in who he is, but he becomes a fortress for his people so that they don't have to worry about building their own fortresses. You see, Jesus redeems us from fear and insecurity. He takes us out of that. He says, I will be your fortress. Now you can go and focus on building my kingdom. No longer do you have to live in this place of fear. You don't have to worry about establishing yourself. I will establish you. I want you to focus on establishing my kingdom. So why does it look like, though, for us to do this, to go out and build God's kingdom? I think this story might make it a little bit clearer. I remember when I was either 17 or 18 years old, I attended this Bible study on Friday nights. And they asked me if I would lead a Bible study on Paul's instructions to Timothy regarding women in the church in 1 Timothy 2. Now, if you know me, I am very passionate about women in leadership, and I believe that Paul was a liberator of women. I don't think that he was limiting their role. I think that 1 Timothy is a special piece. But so when I go there and they ask me to teach, the reason that they're asking is because all the men are going to be gone that week at a work function, and they can't have a woman teach Bible study. So you see, I'm in a bit of a predicament. So I go there, and it just is an epic failure. They preach at me about how they shouldn't be preaching. That's what ends up happening. I feel discouraged. I feel like I'm a horrible teacher. I should never teach Bible study. This is horrible. I'll never convince anything otherwise. So what do? I turn to this wonderful, secure, loving, kingdom-minded woman, Mrs. Harold. She was incredible. But what she did was she just sat down, she took time to listen to my story, she prayed with me, she encouraged me, and she said, Lance, it's not over. This is not the end of the world. You're going to be okay. You're going to have more opportunities, more is going to come. But she was so secure in herself, established in the Father's love, she was able to move forward and build God's kingdom through serving me in my time of need. And I came to her, she wasn't worried about what she was doing or what she had to do. But the crazy thing is this is how she was all the time. That's just who she was. So my challenge to us is that we would go out this week and just find one person to encourage. Just serve them. Maybe it's praying with them, sharing a scripture. Maybe it's just spending quality time with them. Something simple. But through doing this, I believe that we can kill the inner Herod in us. That fear and insecurity that cries out, build your own fortress. And we can build a kingdom that is greater than Herod's. We can build God's kingdom.
Right. Good job, Lance.